University of Melbourne reports smog is killing humans. The death toll is rising with thousands affected. We must act now to clear the air. The University of Melbourne reports that smog kills humans. We must act now to address this deadly environmental threat.
University of Melbourne researchers have found that health impacts from heavy vehicle emissions are costing the community more than A6, $2 billion per year. The discussion paper titled The Unpriced Burden, Heavy Vehicle Emissions and the 6-2 billion Health Cost, and co-authored by Dr. Clare and Professor Mark Stevenson, assesses the annual taxpayer cost of premature deaths.
Cardio-respiratory hospital emissions and lung cancer treatment resulting from inhalation of nitrogen oxide. Emissions produced by trucks on our roads. The paper has been released in anticipation of the federal government heavy vehicle nationalized law reform later this year, while the proposed policy options ahead of this revision consider the regulatory framework, safety, productivity, and administrative impacts of heavy vehicles. They do not adequately account for the impacts on public health and the associated economic ramifications. The health impacts of no-true inhalation from trucks pose a serious risk to the Australian public and contribute to an already overburdened health system.
The paper found
An analysis of major vehicle markets, including oxide. Some heavy vehicles are responsible for a quarter of on-road nitrogen oxide emissions. Even brief exposures measured in minutes can cause inflammation of the respiratory system and may precipitate asthma attacks in susceptible individuals. The author said exposure burn activities such as walking, running, or cycling in major roads can reduce oxygen supply to the heart and activate pathways involved in blood clotting, increasing the risk of heart attack and strokes. Exposure to NO2 is also significantly lots of shade air with premature mortality and increased emergency department presentations and hospital admissions for asthma,
chronic obstructive pulmonary disease,
pneumonia,
ischemic heart disease, myocardial infarction,
stroke, cardiac arrhythmias, hypertension. They call on the review panel for the heavy vehicle national law to consider helping back from truck emissions outlined in our discussion paper.
We set out achievable recommendations that will see an enormous return on investment, thereby delivering preferred health outcomes that Professor Stevenson.
Children are particularly impacted by less emission. The paper found both due to the susceptibility to NOx inhalation and the frequency of schools and childcare centers. Major roads in a recent case study of a proposed child health center in Ravens West. Researchers found the concentration of air pollution particles measured at the site exceeded both World Health Organization and Australian guideline levels, resulting in a 28% increase in the risk of childhood asthma incidence, equivalent to being exposed to wafer cigarettes per day.
University of Melbourne reports the health impacts of NO2 inhalation from trucks.
The health impacts of NO2 inhalation from trucks pose a serious risk and contribute to an already overburdened health system, the paper found.
University of Melbourne researchers have found that health impacts from heavy vehicle emissions are costing the community more than A6, $2 billion per year. The discussion paper, titled The Unpriced Burden, Heavy Vehicle Emissions and the 6-2 billion Health Cost, and co-authored by Dr. Clare and Professor Mark Stevenson, assesses the annual taxpayer cost of premature deaths, cardio-respiratory hospital admissions, and lung cancer treatment resulting from inhalation of nitrogen oxide. Emissions produced by trucks on our roads. The paper has been released in anticipation of the federal government's heavy vehicle national law, HVNL, reform later this year. While the proposed policy options ahead of this revision consider the regulatory framework, safety, productivity, and administrative impacts of heavy vehicles, they do not adequately account for the impacts on public health and the associated economic ramifications.
The health impacts of no-to inhalation from truckers pose a serious risk to the Australian public and contribute to an already overburdened health system. The paper found
An analysis of major vehicle markets,
including Australia,
found heavy vehicles are responsible for a quarter of on-road nitrogen oxide emissions.
even brief exposures measured in minutes can cause inflammation of the respiratory system and may precipitate asthma attacks in susceptible individuals. The other said
Exposure during activities such as walking, running, or cycling near major roads can reduce oxygen supply to the heart and activate pathways involved in blood clotting, increasing the risk of heart attacks and strokes.
exposure to no-to is also significantly associated with premature mortality and increased emergency department transportation and hospital admission for asthma,
Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, pneumonia, ischemic heart disease.
myocardial infarction, stroke, cardiac arrhythmias, and hypertension. We call on the review panel for the heavy vehicle national law to consider health impacts on truck emissions outlined in our discussion paper.
We set out achievable recommendations that will see an enormous return on investment, thereby delivering preferred health outcomes.
Sacrifice to Stevenson.
Children are particularly impacted by heavy vehicle emissions,
The paper found
both due to their susceptibility to nox inhalation and the frequency of schools and child care centers on major roads.
in a recent case study of a proposed child care center in Melbourne's West, researchers found the concentration of air pollutant particles measured at the site exceeded the World Health Organization and Australian guideline levels, resulting in a 28% increase in the risk of childhood asthma incidents.
Equivalent to being exposed to 8-4 cigarettes by day. Dr. Walter and Professor Stevenson recommend establishing low-emission corridors throughout urban areas, accelerating the transition to low and zero-emission heavy vehicles, including our bus fleet,
Shifting freight to cleaner modes.
and exploring options to route freight away from residential areas.
Schools and child care centers.
Researchers have found that health impacts from heavy vehicle emissions are costing the community more than a $6.2 billion per year. Heavy vehicle emissions impose a significant unpriced burden on our health and economy.
The health impacts of NO2 inhalation from trucks pose a serious risk to the Australian public and contribute to an burden